Hello, my dear friends. Today I want to discuss a topic that I have spoken about repeatedly. I've said many drushes about this, and I think the people, the members of the shul, the members of the community, in this respect, are outstanding. But it never hurts to emphasize something again. And there's a reason why I am choosing specifically to talk about this topic today, and that is welcoming people when they come into shul, welcoming strangers or welcoming guests, going over to them, making them feel comfortable, Shalom Aleichem, how are you, etc. Two reasons why I have chosen to speak about this topic today. First of all, I was in a certain shul, I'm not going to tell you where. They would daven mincha and Marav at this shul. There must have been about 150 people in the room, so I was there maybe a half hour. Not one single person said hello to me. Now, I wasn't offended. It didn't bother me. If I was more sensitive, I probably would have been offended. I have a theory why it is that people don't say hello, and that is people outside the New York area are friendlier. But in New York, there's this, I call it the subway mentality. People, you get onto a subway car during rush hour, you're squashed like sardines next to 100 people. And there's like an unwritten law, don't talk to the person who's squashed next to you. It would be impolite. And if you started a conversation with the guy, the sardine next to you, the person would look to you like, who are you? And why are you invading my space? So we're conditioned not to talk to strangers, and that carries over into Jewish life as well. So when we come to shul, we don't know who the people are. We don't talk to strangers. That's why people don't say hello. So I'm being melamed zchus. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt for Klal Yisrael. However, it's not the right thing to do in the shul. A person has to say hello. So that's the first reason why I'm discussing this, because I had this experience this week. Nobody said hello to me when I was in this particular shul. But secondly, as you get older, every day you're supposed to learn something new. It's not always so, we don't always have the time to learn something new. But today I learned something new that moved me so much, and that is that I spoke about this mitzvah of welcoming people into the shul. I've talked about it for years, but I never knew that it's a mitzvah saseh in the Torah, or it's based on a positive mitzvah in the Torah. I was reading an article by Rabbi Safran, a dear friend of mine, and he quotes a chinuch in this week's parsha that says that there's a mitzvah to welcome people to shul. The Torah says in this week's parsha, "V'hafta mesager," you should love the convert, Kigerim hayisam be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you yourselves were foreigners in the land of Mitzrayim. The plain meaning is v'hafta mesager. We're talking about a convert. Converts are called, who go through Geirus, are called Geirim. That's how the Rambam codifies it, and that's the Chinuch as well, says that we're talking about a convert. The Rambam says the reason why you have to love a convert is because they have, by their own volition, they have decided to join the Jewish people. So they deserve extra special respect. That's why there's a mitzvah, hafta mesayir, you should love the ger. The Chinuch seems to also intimate that that's the reason, but then he throws in another few words in discussing this mitzvah, and he says that the ger is in a very insecure position because he's new to the Jewish people. He didn't grow up in the society, so there's a particular insecurity, and that's why you should go out of your way to be nice to a ger, to love the ger, because he deserves our support. And then the Chinuch says that based on this, one could learn that any time there are new people who come to the community, and there's a certain element of insecurity, of not knowing anybody, walking into a place where you don't know a single person, then there's a mitzvah, there's a special mitzvah, based on the mitzvah of Haftam Seger. The Chinuch seems to be saying that the Haftam Seger is not talking about guests, but the Chinuch says that based on the mitzvah, it's talking about converts, but based on that mitzvah, we could extrapolate that the Torah expects us to welcome anybody who's in an insecure position, anybody who has left home, anybody who's alone, anybody who's moving into a new situation, there's this mitzvah of Ahavta Mesager. The principle applies as well, because a person has to worry about the sense that if somebody's insecure and in a position where he's overwhelmed, then there's a special mitzvah to go over to the person and make the person feel comfortable. And I was just blown away that I never knew that this is, the chinuch says this, that this is a basis for the mitzvah to go over and welcome a person. So not only is it something that logic dictates that you should be nice to people, but it's based on a mitzvah in the Torah, v'ahavtam es hager. I wasn't insulted when I went to this shul with 150 people, but I have been in situations in the past where I was offended or was hurt. When I was 20 years old, I joined the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. There was not one single person in those days. Nobody went to Eretz Yisrael to learn. It was very rare and unusual. But my parents were on sabbat. My Olei Amashon were on sabbat. My father took a sabbatical from his shul, so that the whole family went to live in Eretz Yisrael. So I went and joined the Mir Yeshiva. I walked into the Beis Medrash. I didn't know a single soul. I was lost. I felt so insecure. And I wish that I knew somebody that I could talk to and tell me what to do and where to sit and what's the system here. And after standing there for like 15 minutes, almost in a daze, a certain fellow came over and he said, Shalom Aleichem. I don't remember his name. It's 50 years ago already, but I remember he was from Detroit. He said, Shalom Aleichem. My name is so-and-so. How are you? Welcome to the Mir Yeshiva. And let me tell you what the system is here and how everything works. It made such an enormous difference for me. And after that, maybe that's one of the reasons why I've spoken about this topic so much, because I understood the insecurity of being in a new place where you don't know anybody. So even if you're a guest and maybe you know your host, but there's a certain element of discomfort. And every single person has, it could be as secure as everybody might be, but everybody has sensitivities. Everybody feels insecure at a certain level. And it's therefore so very important to go over to people and make them feel welcome. The end of the pasuk is Ki ger ma'yisam be'eretz Mitzrayim. The Torah says you should love the ger because Ki ger ma'yisam be'eretz Mitzrayim. So the chinuch says that means that we were in a position of insecurity in Mitzrayim. So we should know from our own experiences what it was like, even though none of us were there. And the Chumash was not written for people that were in Mitzrayim. It was written for all generations. But it's not that difficult to think about what it was like for the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, in addition to the fact that they were persecuted and they were enslaved. But this was not their country. This was not their land. They were strangers. They were strangers. They weren't part of the Egyptian society, Egyptian culture. And that made it ever so more difficult. As difficult and painful as it was to be enslaved, but the insecurity of being in a foreign country made it far more difficult. So the Torah is saying, think about your own experience and extrapolate from that to what it must feel like if you're a stranger walking into a room where you don't know anybody. If you're a stranger a new child in a school like I was, a new child comes into the classroom. There's this feeling. There's like a hole inside your heart or an emptiness in your stomach because it's overwhelming not to know anybody and not to know what the system is. So what we learn from this, from Ki ger ma'yisam be'eretz Mitzrayim, is that a person has to think about his own experiences. And just like I shared with you the story of myself when I joined the Mir Yeshiva, I'm sure every single one of you has had similar experiences. If you go back to your childhood, when you entered maybe nursery or kindergarten or first grade, or if you moved from one neighborhood to another, or whatever it is, I'm sure everybody could find situations where they felt a sense of insecurity. And that should form the basis for the mitzvah of Ahavta Mesager. The Torah connects the two. The Torah says, V'ahavtam es hager, because ki ger ma'isem beretz Mitzrayim. You should love the ger because you experienced that yourself. So we should think not only about the Mitzrayim experience, which is it's far more difficult to think about. You have to contemplate, to think about what it was like to be in Mitzrayim, the insecurity. But certainly we've had those experiences ourselves, live experiences where we feel a sense of insecurity and weakness and discomfort. So we should think about those situations. When a new person walks into shul, a bell should go off in our heads and say, now I'm going to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of V'ahavtam es hager, ki ger ma'isem beretz Mitzrayim, because I also had such an experience of being a new person in the room and not knowing anybody. I'm going to go over and make the person feel comfortable. That's the mitzvah of V'ahavtam es hager. So I'm so appreciative to Rabbi Safran that he wrote this article about V'ahavtam es hager, and he quoted this pasuk, and now I looked in the art scroll. I see the art scroll quotes the chinuch as well. It's a terrific chinuch. If you want to see it inside, it's mitzvah Taf Lamed Aleph. That's 431. You could look it up yourselves and read it. It has a greater impact when you read it yourself. You should read the words of the chinuch. So this is a tremendous mitzvah. Now I think the people in our community, when it comes to welcoming others, are phenomenal. They're super friendly and warm. They do that. So I'm just giving an extra push. That is as good as it is. Let's be even better. And it's not welcoming. It does not end by going over and saying Shalom Aleichem. Welcoming means invite people for a Shabbos meal, ask them what type of assistance they need, call them during the week, tell them, is there anything that I could do for you? Help them out, tell them where the kosher stores are. Whatever you could do to help people out is the fulfillment of this mitzvah. And I would add that it's not only, and I've said this also many times, it's not only a mitzvah to welcome guests to the shul, but there are lonely people in every shul. There are people that are going through difficult times. There are people that don't have a large social network. To say hello to the person that you're friendly with is a nice thing, but to say hello to somebody who needs support, who's going through a difficult time, it may be a person who lost a loved one, whatever the situation is, that's who you need to say hello to. Don't worry about the person that your great friend. If you don't say hello to him, if you don't say good Shabbos, he's not going to be upset. But go search for the people, the lonely people, the people who are insecure, the people who need a boost. And a person has no idea how much of a difference it makes. I remember how much it meant to me that this fellow from Detroit came over and said Shalom Aleichem, and he said, is there anything I could do for you? Let me explain to you. And we all have the on a constant basis, we have the ability to make people feel good, and by doing so, we fulfill this mitzvah of V'ahavtam es hager. We should love the convert and also love people who are strangers in our community.